everybody, this is Heather from the Chronicles of Mama Mac, and we are in this week's podcast of Real Talk with Mama Mac. Welcome to you all. I, again, am so thankful and grateful for the opportunity to be able to come here today and really, truly experience these open conversations with you. Now, this week's Real Talk with Mama Mac is about feelings. If you have been following, and if not, please do check it out. Every Thursday, I do a an Ask the Coach session on Facebook where you have the opportunity to open a discussion with me. And this is another way in which I open a discussion around many different topics. Last week's topics was around feelings, just because, you know what? November and December and January stir up a lot of feelings in each and every one of us. And they stir up these feelings, good and bad, because of our experiences, because of our wonder years, because of our childhood upbringing and patterns and beliefs. And I just want to, really truly get back to the basics with things. If you are struggling, or if you are stuck, or if you are finding resistance and looking for change in anything in your world, you really truly need to take a look at the very beginning, where you came from, and what taught you and what brought you to where you are today. And when you do that, and when you're able to reflect and go there, you can actually open up a brand new opportunity to create a world that maybe you never thought possible, and that is totally and absolutely attainable. I learned this the hard way, but I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to learn it regardless. And these last, 15 years of my life have been about reclaiming the childhood and the child and the inner child that I never, ever really truly understood or had a fair chance in developing when I look back at it now. And I'm not here to blame or shame my parents or anything else. Everybody has a story. They had a story. Their parents before them had a story. And I remember reading, in some documentation that I was reviewing, that we can only ever go as far as our parents' hurts, as far as our parents' beliefs and their willingness to take us, to emotionally grow us and create a world for us. I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, because this was what came out of the topic last week. Was I was discussing the John Bradshaw inner child work that I did whenever I was going through my healing journey. And it was a game changer for me. It literally turned my world upside down in the most positive way. And if I had not have done that, I don't believe that I would be standing here today, being able to be this, healed and healing woman, and this healing, voice for you to lean into. Going back to school and getting my certification for both the life and health and wellness side of coaching was probably one of the most profound moments, because I was able to put so many pieces of my life together, and I could speak to, I had this, I always had this inner passion and this inner knowing, and Lord knows we don't go through journeys, without really truly having a takeaway. And my takeaway was that, wow, I experienced all these things in such a dramatic and I'm going to call it hard way, that it taught me how people can feel, and being, a Libra, being, a person who really truly has, I believe, been put on this earth to look at all sides of things. I really was able to recognize and realize how much energy, how much courage, how much strength, how much work, and how much accomplishment was in the power of healing. And so, my focus here when I started my coaching business was about, providing opportunity and giving people an experience to grab a hold. That's still my focus and that's still my priority. But I am learning very, very clearly over these last few months that I have a defined direction and I can truly speak to two sides of this wellness journey. And the first side is, about health and reclaiming your health after you have had an illness. So in the recovery mode. And the other side of that is really truly empowering and working with people to help to get to know their I am story, who they are, what they are, and help them to shift and change those habits of what was, I guess, transferred to us generationally and transferred to us as the truth from our parents. And so it's really exciting. I'm really passionate about this and I have so many things coming up. We're working on the website right now, so stick with me. There's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of new and exciting things that are available on there. Lots of online workshops and programs, and you're going to start to see me out as a guest speaker on many different platforms, and I'm so extremely happy about that. And I do believe that it's because of these conversations that I get to have with you and share with you on a regular basis to open a conversation. Because when we're willing to look at our wounds, at our, experiences that are holding us back and really truly see them with open eyes, we transform them. And that is so powerful. So, as I said to you, today's session is about feelings. My question to you today is, how are you feeling? We've got Christmas, probably 4 weeks away. What does your Christmas story look like? What does your holiday story look like? Did you have big family gatherings? Were they positive? Were they, negative? What was it that, has showed up or shows up for you? What's your story around Christmas? What's your story about giving and receiving and all of those things? For me personally, Christmas, I don't know if it's one of my favorites. I have worked really, really hard as an adult woman and continue to work really hard to create traditions for my family. But I think that for the longest time, I struggled with the fact that I was blinded by my wounding. Christmas for me growing up as a child was all about worrying and fearing that there was never going to be enough. I would sacrifice my own things so that I would make sure that the people around me had what they needed. I would go out of my way to not make it a big deal. And, it also put me emotionally on eggshells around the Christmas holidays because this was a time when all of the big personalities of my life gathered. And, that inner warrior that was championing through life, out in front would always try and, cultivate conversations, helicopter the situations that were happening to ensure that it was safe and it was secure and that these big family gatherings didn't turn into the emotional minefield of distress, dysfunction, fiery blow-ups, anger, resentment, and all those things that I had come to associate with Christmas holidays. So, on the same token, in my own family, my sister, she just loved the hell out of Christmas and she did it up like nobody's business. And I was so envious of that she could truly be in a place where she could deliver all of the traditional fundamentals in which, I had done, but she just had so much flair, and she had the spirit of it, and she was transferring that over to her family, and it was amazing to watch, and I longed to be able to do that. But because of my wounding and my lens that I was wearing, it was just really hard for me to do that. And I see that now. And, I strive to work through that. And it will be what it's going to be. But I have to say that my Christmas holidays are best spent with just having my kids around and really truly allowing them to be the people that they are and loving on them in my way, in a way of no stress, no expectations, just love and just openness to really truly be themselves on all of their levels and have the acceptance to be able to do that. So, to talk about feelings today is a really powerful thing in depth because, it does spark off some of the things that, have been part of my story. And when I did my inner healing work with Karen, many moons ago, she introduced me to a author, John Bradshaw, and John Bradshaw was a therapist who then became a writer and a lecturer and all those things. And he basically, stumbled upon the discovery of healing an inner child, your inner child, based on his own experience and working with different people who were going through the same things. They were stuck in the same loops of, regret and sorrow and sadness and fear and grief and anger and hurt and all of these things, and no matter how much conventional time was spent on doing the regular therapy, they weren't moving beyond their limitations. They were just stuck. And he speaks to it in his books and on his lectures that for the longest time, good God, he wouldn't take people into the depths of their emotional IMs because he wasn't even comfortable with his own I am of who he was and what his story was. But he learned very quickly that there was power in reconnecting the parts of ourselves from the very beginning that were cultivated and started and actually formed and shaped who we are as an individual today. So that's our inner child. And, I'm going to go through a few things here today just to, kind of give you an insight as to where this comes. But as I said earlier in this podcast, our families only are able to take us as far as their pain, as far as they're willing to face. So if you have a parent or parents or whoever your parenting figure was, that has been wounded themselves and they go, they're going to the only as far as they're willing to go with their pain, then you could have a really limited experience. You could have, a parent that, is acting out as an adult. I see this, I've seen this in my life, and I look at it and think, wow, now, it makes so much sense because whenever we are born, we are magical. And if we think about this for a minute, we have infant, we have toddler, and we have the childhood stage. So whenever you're an infant, you're born and all of your needs are taken care of. You are codependent. And you are looking into the eyes of the persons who are there to take you, to show you, to model you, to mirror to you what all of these healthy relationships look like, what the situations, just learning the healthy ways to create boundaries, to express, to do all those things. And then at about 7 years old, we come to a place where the rational brain kicks in. And that's where we start to pick up the, oh, you can't do that because, or you're not going to do that, or, maybe that's where anger, frustration, shame, and blame comes into things. And let's face it, we've all been in a situation where we've experienced these things, where we've been punished, we've been spanked, we've been shut down, where our special wonder child or magical child is really, really, truly capped. That real life hits and hits with a vengeance, and no longer, are things magical moonbeams and sunshine. So, like I said, you have these time frames where when you're in your magical years, pre 7 years old, you're curious, you're resilient, you're adventurous, and you're just exploring the world at such an amazing level. And we are set up to really, truly start to learn the power of how we develop our relationships. So, whenever you are born until about 6 months old, you're going to be very codependent. And that's where codependency starts to really, truly take form, because you need everybody to take care of you, and you need your parents to feed you. It's the first years that you are really truly building the identity of who you are. So those first eyes that you look at depend and will set up what your story about the life around you looks like. So if you've got a mother or a father that are distant, a mother or father that are not, dialed into your relationship, don't know how to give you love, don't know how to express feelings, or just is not present, then you right away are going to learn this patterning of, oh my God, my world is not safe. I'm not safe. There's nobody here to look after me. So this is how things form. We've learned time and time again that our emotional brain is very, very important. It's as important as our logical brain is. And there are studies and conversations and proof that that emotional brain is the first brain to develop. It is the one that is developed in these magical years of that, codependent cycle whenever you're first born. So if you're looking into the eyes of somebody who just doesn't know how to do or give you or meet your needs, then your first interaction, your first story is going to be, oh my God, I'm not liking this. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. And it sets up this story in your emotional brain that connects these feelings of not being attached to a way of life. And then, we go into the around the two-year-old mark. And this is where we do the switch, where we start to separate. This is a normal. Oh, I breathe, because this is very hard for me to speak about, because I know that, I definitely struggled with this in my relationship with my children. Not necessarily in the early years, but in the middle years, because of my wounding, because of my patterning. I didn't realize that I was so, so broken and playing out this old reel of what life looked like, and I was just smothering. And, for that, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I've spoken this so sorry for so long. And, there is some, regret around that for sure. And I had to just keep healing and loving my way through it, because I know that, I was doing the best I could with what I had and what I knew. And now it's completely different. And I can only work to heal my relationship and then have it transfer back and forth. So if you're out there and you're a mom or you're a dad and you're experienced, or made some choices based on the lens that you were wearing, it's okay. It's okay if you are truly moving forward and wanting to change things, and you're making a change, and you've done the best that you can do. So keep going, keep making the change, and make it different. Show them something different. And that's what I'm doing now. And, I trust that someday, my kids will turn around and really truly realize the hard work and the effort that I took to really change my patterning so that they would have a really good fair shot with their children and the children ahead of us. So, as I said, at 2 years old, we begin to separate from our parents. We're no longer really in that codependent stage. This is where the opposition starts to come into effect, where we create our own boundaries, where we want to belong to something that is ours. That, this is where, no, I'm not going to. And depending on how you are, I guess, what's the word? Depending on how the parents around you react to this and what is modeled to you, you will form a strong sense of separation and understanding and self-identity, and be very firmly rooted in the power of, wow, this feels great. Or you're going to be in the place of, oh my goodness gracious, I can't do that because I'm not good enough. And this is where those forms of self-doubt come into place, where we question, our own safety. We question. So when you start to take a look at the codependent side in the first, 1 to 2 years old, that is where we're heavily leaning on the people around us to show us and mirror all of our needs. And then at 2 years old, we separate from them thinking, okay, I got this independence and I can do this. And we start to walk and we start to explore the world around us. If those parents don't necessarily trust the world, and they've mirrored that to us in the first 2 years, and then we move into the phase 2 to, 6 years, 7 years old, then we're going to be in a place where we're questioning everything that we're doing. And so that begins to start that loop of self-doubt, that self of not enough, that self of unworthiness. Those kinds of conversations become a dialogue in our loop and in our head. And then you get to the adult child, and, this is where that teenage time where we're at, where once again we're going through all of these boundaries and these ideas, because our body and our mind has just done a complete flip, and we've started things all over again. And so instead of reacting from a place of our own fears, when we're role modeling and modeling things, we really truly have to come from a place of, wow, understanding and being very thoughtful and very creative in the ways in which we empower and encourage our children to explore these new feelings, to understand what's going on, and to know that what they're experiencing is normal. Because this is a second go round of that creation loop from those early years, where we can set our children up to a place, our children and our young adults up in a place where their patterning plays out as a wounded adult if we're not careful. Now, I think every one of us has this inside of us in one shape or form. Especially, I'm 47 years old. Look back over the generations that we've come through. It's not always been easy. And I think, in this day and age, the world has changed, and there's a lot of awareness and a lot of understanding around certain areas, certain things, and the ways in which we live, and they're not the same. pardon me. But we come to a place where it's a whole new world of all of the stuff that we never ever talked about before. And oh my God, we're all uncomfortable. So let's just decide right now that feelings are a good thing. Yes, they're uncomfortable, but they are the gateway to really, truly, and fully living. John Bradshaw talks about two different ways that you can fully be in your life. You can be an acting out adult, or you can be an acting in adult. And if you're an adult, you're a full-grown adult, but whenever you're questioned and whenever you run up against something that is not, I guess, meeting your comfort level, then you will act out. Whether you're acting out in rage, whether you're acting out in anger, in self-harm, not so much self-harm, but in harming others, removing yourself. These are all ways in which a wound has been created, and you are an adult with a childlike wound that, or a need that's not been met, and it's created this source of acting out to get attention. If you're acting in, maybe you came from a really critical family, and then you start really critically beating yourself up, questioning everything that you do, and just making your world be this place of constant strife and struggle. So, there's several ways, and it does all honestly, come back to a place of what you knew and what you grew as you were growing up. In that infancy and toddler and preschool, it's a magical, magical time. It's that non-logical thinking with feelings, getting back in touch with your life, your energy, and all those magical years. If you are, in a place where you're an acting out adult, maybe there's a piece of you that just wasn't fulfilled, that was shut down, that was, taken for granted or wounded. And this is how to get a reaction, because when you did this, you got a reaction, whether it was good or bad. Either way, you got a reaction. So these are all the emotional triggers and the blowouts that come when our needs are not being met. And, in those infancy and toddler and preschool magical years, we're learning who we are mentally, we're learning who we are sexually. And if you are at all wounded in those time frames, it's setting up the precursor of what your intimate relationships look like and your communication looks like for many years to come, unless you find the strength and the power and the courage to really truly address it head on and be willing to learn new ways of changing the loop and being, in that place. I'm just looking at my notes here. How many times in our lives and as growing up have you heard maybe some of these phrases? What are you crying about? I'll give you something to cry about. Maybe you got yelled at, screamed at, or you were labeled. You know what? Stop being such a crybaby. You're a boy, suck it up. You shouldn't be doing those kinds of things. Maybe, every time you were expressing your feelings, you would run away and hide and not show anybody your emotions, lock it away, stuff it down. What's that showing? It's showing that you are choosing to hide, to be silenced, to not be heard. Maybe if you were sad in a situation, and what's the first thing? Okay, actually, let's back up here for a minute. Whenever we're first born, a baby starts to cry, what's the very first thing that we do? Hungry is the first thing, is it not? So we put a bottle in their mouth. We replace a loss with a food or a drink. If that's not happening, then if they don't settle down after that, you go through all the basics. But if a child's not settling down, how do we self-soothe them? Do we take the time to really honor and get to know their feelings and understand? Or some of us can or may have experienced situations where you were just put in a corner, you were put in your crib, and it was like, enough, stop that crying, don't be acting like this, and so this all sets up situations in which we are not handling our further relationships with. Maybe you discovered very early in life that you found pleasure that distracted you from an uncomfortable situation by self-gratification. Sometimes, if that's the case, you then begin to understand that, hey, I can escape from this by self-gratification, or maybe self-gratification is a way in which to not feel pain. You might learn to, go off, like I said, and weep alone. Be silent and be upset and not express yourself and apologize for yourself. Well, you're just, telling yourself in the world that your feelings aren't willing to be heard, that you should be silenced. And so, here again, we're setting up a pattern and a loop. Maybe you are in a current relationship and you're doing nothing but fighting and arguing and over everything that you do, and there's no way of getting around it. Always is a fighting and arguing experience. Well, perhaps maybe fighting and arguing is the only way that you see how to work through the problems of not having your needs met. So, it's imperative that you get to a point where the communication is open and a coach, a counselor, a psychiatrist, and a doctor can help navigate you to a program or a workshop exercise that can help you to recreate that way in which you communicate. Again, if you're angry, if you're explosive and you are lashing out, you're obviously you're an acting out adult. But this is the way that you learned from your patterning how to express your emotions that were not being met, the ways in which you felt vulnerable or hurt or invisible or anything like that. And so it's really important. Anger is healthy. It's all healthy, and I struggled with this one. Just learning how to honor anger in a healthy way, because in my life, anger was just explosion. Anger was trauma. Anger was, all of the things that set off my PTSD and my wounds and all of those things. And so finding and changing my relationship with anger and validating that anger is a need that's gone unmet, and you do have the right to be angry. You just don't have the right to impose that explosion on anybody else. The other things, especially this is one that, that really, really hits home with me is scarcity. And, make sure that you eat up all your food and that food because you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Make sure that, you take all of that over there because, we don't know when we're going to have it again. And things are really rough. We got to do what we got to do. And even thoughts of, oh, they're rich. My God, they're spoiled rotten. What did I ever do to not have that? So you create this relationship of not enough money to go around as a mindset. And then you resent people, you resent situations, you resent opportunities. And how are you ever going to be happy with any of these things and these thoughts and these patterns? So when you think about it for a minute here, your wounded inner child sets up a dialogue of who you are today. And you don't necessarily, have to be wounded. Your inner child, let's take the wound out of it. Your inner child sets up the dialogue of who you are today in this world functioning. I say wounded because most of us are, and that's another level, and that's okay, and it can be overcome, because all of these things can be reclaimed. You can reclaim your power. You can be, this wonderful, amazing person filled with a life exactly as you want it. It's just about the reclaiming, but most of us are so stuck in our loops and our habits of our inner child set that we are just playing that out. So, as an inner child, or as a child, we had this belief that I am who I amness. And, we carry that forward, whatever that looks like. So I challenge you today to really, truly take a look and look in the mirror and find out who you are. What is your I am story? What is your inner child dialogue that has played out in your life, in your world? If you have wounds, what are they? Can you identify them easily? Or are you in avoidance? So again, the emotional brain develops things first, and then our logical brain comes next. So ultimately, when you take a look at all of this, it really truly is a relationship of child and parent, child and parent, child and parent. And this can be a civil war, emotionally and logically, or it can be one of peace. And I had so much transformation when I was able to find the peace inside of it and let my child be claimed, to be understood, and to be recognized, and to be taught that it's okay. We're okay. One of the very, very most powerful things about this whole inner child situation and thinking is that we've already won the battle. Everything that has happened to us has happened in the past. Unfortunately, we're recycling our traumas in real life. We're recycling our experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, in real life on a loop. So it becomes an expectation of what our life currently looks like. For anyone who has experienced trauma or is experiencing trauma, you will get this part fully, because you are it's playing out in your everyday life. All of your needs, the needs that were never met, that are on that loop, keep playing out, and you are in a place of being stuck, of being frozen, of being ill, of being sad, of being angry, of being just unsatisfied and unknown and invisible. Okay, I want to say to you today that you've won. You've already won. You've been through the hardest periods of your life, and you've overcome them. You have shown up. You have sat in a place of being faced with so much adversity, but you did it. You made it. You passed it. Your adult version of yourself is right here, and it's strong enough to carry you forward, to carry you free of fear, to free of pain. We have that power in us. And, if you're in this place, reach out to me, and I will help to get you to a place with either myself or with a colleague or an associate that can help you to really truly heal this side so that you are living the life that you want. It is attainable. I am here today to tell you it is attainable and you can do this. Now, I'm not trying to be a preacher or anything like that. I'm just speaking passionately from my heart, my experience, my understanding, and my knowledge of this situation. I've been there and I am here and I can see it all with great perspective now, and it is so powerful. It is so freaking powerful. So, feelings definitely are a part of our learning, growing, moving, and all of those things. What I want to read to you here right now is, I'm just scrolling, sorry. Yes, all right. So, a very good friend of mine once said about inner child. I'm going to go back here. Sorry, I have a lot of different things open here and a lot of things that I want to share. And, understanding the inner child. I'm not asking you to embrace, to regress and go into a place of being unresponsible and irresponsible and all those things. When I say to claim your inner child, it's about claiming the inner power within you, that little source, that fun. How does an inner child come out, or when does it come out in our adult life? When you're drinking and you're having fun, when you're belly laughing, when you're doing crazy and fun experimental things, when you're skipping down the street with your children, when you are really truly dialed into a magical experience. That's your inner child, and it's a part of us. We all have that. It is a valuable piece of ourselves to complete the connection of whole, to be reminded every day that yes, I'm an adult, but I also have this piece of me that is worth every piece of enjoyment, experience, and wonder. John Bradshaw makes a quote inside of his book that, Walt Disney has this down pat. And before we turned 7 years old, we believed in all that Walt Disney had to tell us. And then the realization phase came and we realized that there was yeses and nos and deaths and pain and suffering that was all woven inside of those stories. But it was the way in which we were processing them, at what age we were processing them, that we got to really truly learn how to express our feelings around them. So, understanding your inner child. There are many, many interpretations about what the inner child really means, but this one does resonate with the most of us. And it is that your inner child is the seed of who you are. Your inner child is always within you. It is the seed that you started as. It's the essence of your soul, and it's the person that you were before the world told you who to be. Now, did you hear that? Your inner child is always within you. It is the seed that started as the essence of your soul and the person you were before the world told you who to be. This is not to say that the inner child is the ultimate you, rather it's just the beginning point of you. So it is the seed in which you came from, the seed that gives rise to the flower that you continually blossom into and become. And there's also external factors that we've just talked about, like your birth, like the location, like your story, how often it was nourished, how often it was, cared for. These are all things that from seed we've worked on to create this flower. I've talked about it before, the tree version of ourselves. So it's really, really important to know that we are sponge-like and we are always able to learn, to grow, and to sprout. It is our rite of passage to do that because of the situations in which we experienced maybe as young kids. We have not learned how to do that, but you can reclaim it. And I want to, just nail that home today. Your life can be reclaimed. Your inner child can be reclaimed. You can amalgamate the two of them together and you can be the best, biggest version of yourself and boldly and powerfully set up a life that is absolutely transformational. With that, I'm going to leave you about this Real Talk with Mama Mac podcast on feelings, and I hope that it helped you a little bit. If you are interested in digging a little bit deeper into the programs and workshops around your inner child that I offer, around healing that I offer, and around your wellness, then please do reach out to me. You can definitely connect with me on the website at www.thechroniclesofmamamac.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel where these podcasts are currently being housed. We are in the works to get them out onto many different platforms, so stay tuned. That is coming. And reach out to me by email too, thechroniclesofmamamac@gmail.com. I am here. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And I can't wait to connect. I thank you so very, very much for joining me today in this next episode of Real Talk with Mama Mac. And until next time, we will see you again, and be well and just be you. Take care, everybody. For more information about everything with the Real Talk with Mama Mac podcast, you can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at the website at www.thechroniclesofmamamac.com. Brought to you live today from the home studios of The Chronicles. Have a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.